Dear Charles and Vincent, by the time this is read on off the menu, I will have turned 30. Although to a certain extent, nothing much has changed. In other ways, it feels like a monumental shift. As the day has been approaching over the last few months, I've really reflected a lot on my life so far, and I have to say, I don't feel satisfied. On the contrary, I feel a lot of anxiety and dread. As background, I am a teacher, wanted to be one since middle school, but my several years in the field have disillusioned me. And I feel that I have wasted a lot of precious time on something I want to get out of. I have so many interests, such as history, government, military, language, culture, theology, etc. Many of the topics we cover here, but they all potentially pull me in different competing directions. I feel like I would be good at many different things, but it feels to me like the time to have done and tried those things is gone. This, coupled with other things, has really made me feel like I haven't accomplished much in my 20s. To be honest, the thing I'm proudest of doing in my 20s was converting to Catholicism. And I have you both to thank for that. But romantically and job wise, I don't feel accomplished. I feel behind. And silly as it might sound, I feel like it's almost impossible to fix now. I feel like I'm playing catch up. I suppose my question is twofold. Number one, what advice would you give to someone entering their 30s so that they use them to the fullest? Number two, what advice would you give to someone struggling to figure out the right path in life, who feels they realized mistakes too late and now has no idea how to start over? Where do I begin? I apologize for the length of the post, but it has been on my mind for quite some time, and you both have always great insights with heavier questions like these. Thank you, and God bless.
Well, that's a very, very good question and worth answering. Firstly, it's important to remember that if you have a lot of different talents and a lot of different interests that are all over the map, it often takes longer for you to discover your path in life than it does other people who may know sooner what it is they want to do. But take it from someone who's 62 years old, you are far from done. And it's not a question of playing catch up, it's a question simply of going on the path that's correct for you. But you very often have to undergo a certain amount of preparation before you can find it. You've already learned a lot of skills regarding education, how to teach. What you might consider doing is going back to school in an area that you find more congenial. It might be that it's something you need to focus on. I mean, if you're in middle school right now, middle school kids can get really annoying. So perhaps what you want to do is go and get your master's so you can teach high school, or even, God help us, go for your doctorate. Now, there are only a handful of graduate places that I could really recommend uh, with any assurance. This is what I'm at, being one of them, the ITI. Not that this is an ad for the ITI, but at the age of 58, I went back to school. Of course, in my position, I had to keep up doing what I was already doing, writing this show and various other commitments. I just had to keep I had to keep writing, doing this show, doing the various things I have to do to keep eating while I was still at school. You may not have that problem, but um, that's the one thing I think you should really think about is the possibility of going back to school in a place that getting a degree in a topic that really interests you and focusing on that. That's one possibility. Now there are other things. Uh, the as far as the romantic aspect goes, your biggest thing there is to pray that the right girl comes along. Now here's really running to the divine will for your life. If you get desperate and you feel you've got to be married, you're very likely to make the wrong choice. You pray that the right girl comes along, and if she doesn't, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Take it from me, a productive bachelorhood is a lot better than a bad marriage. A bad marriage, I'm here to tell you from having several friends involved in them, it can be hell on earth. And you want to wait for the right woman. And if it's meant to be, she's out there. So pray you find her. The other thing, though, is that you don't want to get involved romantically until you are on some sort of a life path. Now, I don't mean to say you've got to be, the president of a corporation. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is, when you've found the road you should be on and you've stepped on it, you're doing it, that's the time to really think seriously about marriage. Right now, if the right girl came along, what would you have to offer? I mean, you're keen on getting out of teaching. All right, well, that's nice. So, how would you support a wife? How would you support a family? So, don't worry about that at all. And especially, don't worry about your being too old. You're not. You're a kid. I'll tell you something funny. One of our teachers here has a 6-year-old now. At the time of our story, was 5. Wonderful little kid called Joseph. And at their Christmas party, I was looking at Joseph running around talking to everyone and, doing what little boys do. And I said to his father, through his eyes, everybody here looks like me. But from my eyes, everybody here looks like him. It's a matter of perspective. So relax. That's the biggest thing I would tell you. Relax and pray. Don't worry. You're not a failure. Life hasn't passed you by. You haven't accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. So what? Very few people's lives match their expectations. And you need to focus on doing the best job you can with what's immediately in front of you. As I say, if you feel trapped, you want to expand, etc., think about going back to school. But as I say, choose that carefully. If you want something of theological bent, I certainly offer my alma mater here at Trumau. But there are other places you could go, I guess. A few. So Ave Maria, I guess, would be one for what's the word I'm looking for? Postgraduate studies, that kind of thing. So relax, pray hard, and relax. Take a deep breath. Don't let your emotions rule you, and think about getting some more schooling.
Yeah, this is coming from two people. I feel like neither Charles nor I really. It took us, I think, both a while to figure out what God had planned for each of us.
Well, that's not true. I knew from the minute I was 59.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Okay. But I remember something my sister said because I was having a really tough time in the 20s, and she said, men especially have it tough in the 20s because they're supposed to know who they are. You're supposed to get out of college and you have it figured out, and then that's who you are, and then you just move forward and do the things that people expect you to do. But it doesn't work like that for most people. At least I don't think so. It didn't work like that for me at all. and some of the reflecting upon that, some consoling thoughts are, I feel like personally, because like I had one of my big hangups was social anxiety. So what I like to think is that God was sort of protecting me during perhaps a time when I'm young and more prone to making really stupid mistakes, and just guiding me out of that time. Um, and so really, I hadn't really dated anyone in my 20s at all. I think I dated like one girl like when I was 21 or something, and then like not at all. And then I guess like I met my wife like I guess when I was at 30, when I was 30 years old. Um, so what Charles's advice for that is like spot on. For the girl, don't get desperate. Okay, do not, do not, don't do that. Um, and the other thing too, we have to redefine what we think of greatness. Like, oh, I haven't created a company, or I haven't done something great, or I haven't whatever, as if it's like um, some sort of weighing machine of accolades that you should have collected. I don't think greatness in the kingdom of God works like that. So I personally think in situations like this that it happened like this for a reason, because God has different paths for you. And I'll just say one last consoling thought, which is another way to frame it is that you haven't peaked yet. You haven't peaked yet.
No.
And I like to think that the later people peak, the better. Do you want to be the person that peaks in grade school? I actually know a friend. I have a friend, and it's one of the saddest things in the world. And these people in high school too, also sad. People in college, not so great, right?
Well, I mean, I can remember at a frat party when I was in my 20s, Cal State Northridge. I remember looking around the room and thinking, for the vast majority of these guys, this is the best it will ever be.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it hit me so hard that night. I don't know why. The thought came out of nowhere. And I can honestly say that I'm grateful to God it didn't hit me that way. There's another thing too, and that is you need to look at the stage in life that you're in and learn to appreciate it. Because every stage in your life will have certain pleasures that are peculiar to it and certain annoyances that are peculiar to it. And when you get a bit older, the pleasures change, so do the annoyances. And you lose some of both and you gain new ones. And if you're smart, you wave goodbye to the old ones and you embrace the new. Well, you embrace the new pleasures, the new problems you don't need to embrace. They'll stick with you, whatever you want to do. And I think that's important to bear in mind. You know, if you're not a very sociable sort, I mean, I can tell you that one of the great joys of my life, all the way through, has been my friends. But the friends I've known longest, our relationship has changed over the years, reflecting the state of life we're in. I mean, now most of my friends, their children have started on some kind of path, and they're beginning to turn into grandparents. Well, what does that mean? Well, for one thing, it means that you're going to sit and look at all the pictures of the grandkids when you go over. And if you're a friend, even if you're not all that excited about it, you'll keep your lack of excitement to yourself. And you'll show interest because you know that Bobby graduating from Stanford is the biggest thing in your friend's life. And if you're single, this is particularly important because it helps keep you rooted in reality. One of the downsides of being single, and this is why so many old people become really weird, both men and women, is because they draw ever more into themselves. And one of the ways you combat that, of course, is by staying close, if you're not married, to your nephews and nieces, if you have any, and failing them to the children of your friends. If you do that, you'll stay connected and you won't become quite so weird. Not that there's anything wrong with becoming weird.
That's just such a fun.
Well, it's
that was
true.
that was a great, perfect line to close on.
Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you happen to like going to someplace like the Mark Twain and, hiding out for weeks doing drugs, I mean, that's not my idea of a good time, but if that's what you want,